Hello, hello, greetings. This is Nelson from Celestial Warmth here for the Angerxiety Healing and Educational event. And I would like to thank you for joining me today. And by all means, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to answer them the best way I can. In regards to Angerxiety, the reason why I labeled it that is because this is an emotion that is probably very prevalent right now with the advent of people going to work soon, and maybe not all companies are fully prepared to provide that safety and security that their employees need. So when they go back to work, they feel like they are as safe as can be in returning, and that they are at low risk to contract any unwanted illness that they can also bring home to their family. So that's predominantly what inspired me to essentially create this event, because I think a lot of us are feeling like we have to protect ourselves, and that we have to prepare for a transition that we probably feel a little uncertain about, and we probably feel apprehensive about, as well as a lot of other things happening out there in terms of social injustice. Now, to begin with, when it comes down to anger, I'm going to bring up some slides here in terms of the emotion of anger, because it's not a negative emotion, because there are variances or nuances to anger that a lot of people don't know. They usually think of anger as a sense of yelling and screaming at somebody, or a really high level of frustration, or a deep bitterness, saturated bitterness towards people or situations that happened in the past. And anger's kind of got a bad rap, which is unjust, because anger is there to do something that's important, and that is to protect you against undesired discomfort or harm. So let's have a look at the anger component. So I'm going to share my screen here for a bit. All right. So when it comes to anger, it's literally called the honorable century in the dynamic emotional integration program that Carla McLaren has created. And I really am quite fond of her work. And for her, what she's experienced over the years is that as an empath who has a very strong and intimate understanding of emotions, and has her own group that are also empaths, highly sensitive empaths, that can interpret these emotions in ways that most of us may feel closed off from, or maybe, I wouldn't say ignorant, it's not the best word for it, but uneducated or unaware. So when it comes down to the gifts of anger, it's important to identify that it's meant for you to practice honor and conviction. It's not there for you to essentially go into states of rage. Now, of course, rage is necessary when someone's under attack, but when it comes down to the healthy amount of anger, honor and conviction is one of the gifts. Healthy sense of self-esteem, proper boundaries, healthy detachment, protection of self and others. So these are some of the gifts that anger brings. These are the key questions that we also have to address when it comes down to anger. And that is, do I feel heard and respected in my interpersonal relationships? Am I comfortable speaking up for myself during these difficult times? Can I say no to demands on my personal time? Can I remain present and focused when others are angry? And what do I value, and what must be protected or restored to its integrity? So we can be angry at ourselves, we can be angry at others, we can be angry with a situation that happened in our lives. What matters is that we have lots of great questions here that we can isolate and we can work on in terms of self-study to remedy anything that needs to be brought back to fortification. So you have your own personal field, and in your personal field, you need to protect yourself from unwanted discomfort placed upon others, maybe for unjust reasons. And when we value that emotion coming up and recognize it, then we'll feel better that we took care of what we needed, which is a safe space to work in and dialogue and collaborate with others in our environment. Now, in terms of other things, here's a great quote. When you have an awakened connection to your anger and a clear sense of your boundaries, you'll be able to honor the boundaries of yours and others. And therefore, your relationships won't be based on power struggles or projections or enmeshments. So it's really important for us to understand that anger isn't there to make anyone else feel uncomfortable, but if they're trying to establish a sense of dominance over you in some way, it's important for you to make clear, turn on the light here, to make clear what you're not going to tolerate anymore, and what makes you feel uncomfortable, and to let them know that that's not going to happen anymore, that you need a greater level of dialogue to find out what the underlying causes are to why this individual or the situation may make you feel vulnerable. Steps to finding completion regarding anger is that channel, that fiery intensity of anger into your bubble, and instead of repressing it or having it explode on people, is you want to speak your truth, but you want to do it in a correct, in a benevolent and or mature way that doesn't inflict further harm on others and creates a cycle of inflammatory situations. You want to rebuild your self-esteem, and you want to have healthy boundaries, and you want to protect yourself and your relationships from any unwanted inflammatory and or volatile reactions. And you want to engage your heart, mind, and body in the release of this emotion once you've addressed what needs to be protected and restored. Then you can move forward, doing physical engagement, maybe go on a treadmill, go for a run, go for a walk, anything that will help you sweat, because what ends up happening with anger is that your endocrine system produces adrenaline and noradrenaline in order to give you the energy that you need to fortify your bubble, your personal space, your field. And when we produce that energy, it also triggers the endocrine system to produce these chemicals that give you the energy, but they also need to be sweated off when done with, so that they don't stay in your body and create some level of toxicity in your body that can assist malignant cells to grow with more acceleration, or to create incoherent cell environments, in which case there may be benign tumors that can grow over time if we don't continue to physically engage and sweat out these hormones. Of course, again, when we use the emotions of anger, we don't want them to be unhealthy. We want to keep them at a nominal level, and we can manage them better so that we can still honor what needs to be addressed and take care of it, and not allow the emotion to run over us and then take matters into its own hands and have the temporary self or the ego do as it needs to essentially correct the situation, but too harshly. What ends up happening is that also weakens your field if you send out the hatred or rage. And the next thing you know, your field is diminished because you've exhausted yourself trying to expel too much anger at once, unconsciously. So there's healthy and unhealthy anger. So when your healthy anger is flowing freely in a healthy way, you won't even know it's there. It'll simply help you maintain your boundaries, your inner convictions, and a healthy sense of detachment. But if you tend to repress your anger, you'll be unable to restore your boundaries because you won't have the strength to focus on what needs to be protected. Therefore, you further damage the situation than correcting it. So if you choose to use it dishonorably against the person who's taken offense against you, you can be feeling very weak afterwards after doing so. And there might be shame that might come up, which is part of the anger family. It's when you become sort of angry with yourself for taking things too far and maybe requiring to apologize for your actions afterwards. So really is important for us to learn how to master ourselves, because when we are able to control our impulses and channel the energy more effectively, we have something that people would revere as a tremendous amount of self-control and poise. And this is what we want to achieve in this lifetime, because there's just far too much unconscious anger being distributed right now, and we really need to harness it better. So you got here. We're going to go back. We're going to go into releasing the anger right now. And in the emotion code modality, how it works is that generally we go and look for emotions that are most predominantly found that need to be released from our field, because it interferes with us being able to find peace and a balance of emotions that are more easily regulated. There's imbalances that create leniencies towards either anger or anxiety. And right now, we're going to release some anger. And how this is done is, you can think of a situation in your life where either you felt unsafe or someone made you feel belittled or demeaned, and you're probably quite angry that that person did that to you. And maybe you felt like, I don't really want to retaliate because I don't want the situation to escalate. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about that emotion right now, a time in your life where you felt that way. And as I'm connecting with you right now online, and for those that could be watching this in the future, what we're going to do is we're going to activate the meridian system. And the meridian system in the body has channels all throughout. So you'll have various channels around your ears, about halfway up your head on the sides, and one that starts from the roof of the mouth and goes up and down the middle of the head, down the spine. And these meridian channels distribute intention or distribute energy flowing through. So your body has a cyclical sort of field that allows that energy to flow in a certain way. Not much different than the earth, where it goes through that toroidal magnetic field distribution of energy. So what we're going to do is we're going to call upon that time, and we're going to activate our hands by rubbing them together. What this does is, if you've done this before, it helps build chi in the hands, or life force energy for the friction. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this amplified chi in the hands to trigger the meridian system to release that anger that was stored from that time of your life. Now, whichever time of your life that was, whatever comes up to you in your subconscious mind naturally on its own, wherever that anger was, and maybe actually has a little anxiety there, and if that's the case, we will release that too. Is there anger and anxiety that we're going to be releasing from Yas today? Yes, there is. So there's going to be a combination. And we're going to understand what anxiety is about afterwards. So think of a time in your life where you had anger and anxiety mixed. Like something was you were infringed upon, and then you felt anxiety about it, re-engaging and facing the person who did that to you, and preparing for it in a way that would be not inflame the situation. So now that we have the hands all charged up, just repeat after me, okay? My hands are feeling kind of vibrating right now. Just repeat after me, close your eyes, get into a nice calm state. Allow, if you want to, you can allow the memory to surface. If not, you can just say, I know what age I was, I know what that memory was. And let's proceed. And we're going to do about more than 3, more than 6, more than 9. So it doesn't require more than 9 meridian passes to trigger the subconscious mind, that one true intelligence that governs the communication of all of your being, to inform it that you no longer want this energy now. So let's do this now. Let's repeat. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. And you can put a little heart into it too if you want. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. And what I'm doing for me, I'm going to be doing for you. So whatever I'm doing will mirror for you. So we're going to be making sure this energy is being released. I release that anger and anxiety from that time of my life. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. Now take a nice deep breath in. Breathe in confidence within yourself, self-esteem, integrity. Imagine that your field is getting a little stronger from the inside out. That you honor your needs, you honor your boundaries, and you'll know when you're stretching yourself too thin and you need to say no, or direct people in another area or direction to find what they need in which that they were asking from you. So how I do what I do is that I always like to make sure that people understand what the emotion is trying to explain. And then we bring up a memory where that could have been the case to gain wisdom about that situation in our lives. And then when we've gained our wisdom, that's the value, that's the gold nugget. And when we ask for its release, we do so repeatedly until the body tests accurate. And I'm using a muscle testing technique that allows me to confirm that this energy is being released from you now. And if you want, you can do your own test. One is to stand up straight. Just allow yourself to have just enough control to stay upright. And then you can ask, was that energy of anger and anxiety released from me? And if your body swings forward or moves forward, it's usually a yes, because it gravitates towards congruency in that way. But if you lean backward, you may need to do a few more passes, asking the request of the release for the anger and the anxiety to be released, until the point where you're, from that time of your life, that anger and anxiety has left. And when you get that swing forward, it means that the body, your field is confirming, it's leaning forward, saying, yes, it has been released. And when it does that, moving forward also is kind of poetic. It means now you can move forward with physical engagement and sweating the toxins out from the situation, even if it was from the past. It's just good to sweat out toxins in general. And if you cannot sweat it out, or you cannot be active, then you can always go to an infrared sauna to sweat out those toxins for about 45 minutes to an hour. 30 minutes doesn't quite do enough. It might kickstart the sweating process, but it really isn't bringing out as much as it should. So spending 45 minutes to an hour in an infrared sauna really helps sweat out toxins. On the other side, now we're going to go towards understanding anxiety. And because we've released anger and anxiety, if there's anyone that you need to forgive in regards to making you feel that way, you can always ask the body to respond to them. Now, if the person has changed their behavior to a point where you feel like they're not going to make that same mistake because they understood that what they did was wrong, they atoned for it, they apologized for it, and now I can forgive them. That's great. Now, if you choose to free them in their entirety of the situation for the sake of your inner peace, then so be it. But my recommendation is, if that person comes back into your life, bringing this energy once more, it is important to address the situation and the behavior that you want to end or you don't want to experience anymore. And by doing so, at least you make it clear to the other individual what behavior is not going to be tolerated. So as we move into anxiety, I'm going to share the next little bit. Anxiety. Now, anxiety is more for, to prevent anything that, prevent a negative experience about something that's coming up in the future, such as a college exam, university exam, a thesis, whatever the case may be. And it's to trigger us to prepare and take action towards being ready for the upcoming event. Now, when it comes to anxiety, it's really just an energy that's there to help you focus and find completion. So the gifts are foresight, focus, task completion, conscience, to remind you that, hey, it's 5 days to the exam, you haven't opened up the book yet, you've been spending a little too much social time, it's time to get back on track for what's really important right now. And that's basically like a procrastination alert system. So you really need to understand that anxiety isn't your enemy, it's your friend. Now, we're talking about standard everyday anxiety, but if we don't honor the anxiety, the messages that are coming, and take necessary action to complete the tasks that we need to, this can cause an adverse effect in the future where you're not prepared for something and things fall apart. And this happens again, and it becomes a pattern. When it becomes a pattern, it can lead to more of a chronic anxiousness that you have on a day-to-day. We can also inherit anxiety, even anger, from our lineage, from our mother or our father. So if there are traits that happen to be in the family and they go back and you see it in other relatives, then it could be something that's ancestral that needs to be released. And in the emotion code, body code, we can address that. The key questions that anxiety is trying to tell you is, what brought this feeling forward? Is there something I've forgotten to take care of? Is there something I'm resisting to resolve? What really needs to get done? And when it comes down to anxiety, great things to do to help ease anxiety is to find out what is something you're either avoiding to do or something that you would rather not do that would be uncomfortable, or what are you trying to avoid, and to then start making a list of all the things that would allow you to prepare for this upcoming thing that maybe you just quite can't avoid. And when you're doing that, you can start focusing on task completion so that you prioritize what's really important to get done and start from there. And if you're not sure what's really the priority, you can also use the same tactic to confirm whether that emotion was released with what will work as the best thing to take care of in the immediate. And if you use your body as a sway test where you're going to go forward for yes and backward for no for certain things that you should prioritize, it takes your mind out of the thinking what needs to be done, and your body starts to guiding you and directing you in what needs to be done first. Because generally the subconscious mind is the all-knowing, and it's trying to explain to you, hey, this is the priority because this is something that needs to be done the soonest, because there's the deadline for doing it is probably going to be coming up sooner than you may think. So when we take the thinking out of the equation, let the body decide for us, it makes it a bit easier for us to just do and to honor the intuitional component. Now, people can confuse anxiety with panic. So let's have a look at this quote. If your anxiety includes dread, freezing, flooding, traumatic flashbacks, or a sense of doom, that is not anxiety, it's panic. And panic is a vital and vibrant emotion that literally saves your life, but it's not anxiety. knowing the difference between panic and anxiety is critical if you want to work well with either of them. So panic's about, often it's trauma related, or something is happening where you're going to be in a crowd with a whole bunch of people and all of a sudden something happens and everyone starts running. Panic is there to help guide you to and give you the energy to find a safe place to be. It's all about finding safety. So panic, that energy triggers your endocrine system to give you the adrenaline you need, that energy you need to sustain enough energy to get to safety. So that's what panic is for. Anxiety is not about finding safety. It's about acknowledging things that have been left unchecked that are important to finish and find completion to. The key, so in terms of, there we go, sorry. Steps in processing anxiety. So, for example, you see on the right, you have clients, pay bills, fix the faucet, organize and clean, yoga, meditate, exercise. And then the last one we haven't checked yet is feel freedom from all accomplishments and rest. That's one thing about anxiety, is that you could just let it run your life, but if you just keep thinking of things that you haven't done yet, and what ends up happening is it really starts to drain your adrenal glands. And the last thing you want is to have an emotion get to a point where you get into adrenal fatigue or exhaustion, and that's not good for your health. So we want to maintain a proper balance between knowing what needs to get done and establishing what really is a priority, and not letting this feeling become something that fuels thought forms that keep you in a loop of constantly doing, to the point where you are exhausted by the end of the day and have no energy for even feeding yourself or tending to personal self-care. You're just too tired. So making a list of everything that you need to do, and thanking anxiety for preparing you and reminding you that there are certain things to get done. And this is where we're going to get back into engaging in the heart, mind, and soul, heart, mind, body, and soul, in releasing anxiety from our field. So if there is another situation in your life where you feel like you've got too much anxiety and you want to release it, now we can do that. And we're gonna, if you have any more anger and anxiety mixed together, yeah, it seems like there's a little bit more left behind it that can be resolved. And we're going to find out how much it's going to take to require for yourself and anyone else that'll be watching this in the future. Will require more than 3, more than 6, more than 9. So again, 9. In the motion code, generally it's taught that 3 to 5 meridian paths is sufficient to release an emotion. I, on the other hand, always at the discretion of the souls or beings that'll be watching this and are attending today. And that is, how much is it going to take to release it from you? And usually what I go for is, if it's not more than 9 that's requested, you do 9 or more. I'd rather do more than do less, or just enough, because I want to make sure that we consciously have asked for these emotions to release. So think about a time where you were feeling angry and anxious at the same time. And this can also happen in terms of domestic abuse as well. And when there can be some anxiety about someone coming home, maybe probably intoxicated and not yourself. And then there's maybe some anger because the person who's intoxicated probably expected certain things when they got home, and they found fault with somebody, and then they felt that they wanted to take their frustrations in the world out on them. And this is what we want to, and then when we feel angry because why are they taking it on us? We did the best we could with what could be done that day. So let's release that anger and anxiety from a time of your life that that occurred. If you need about 6 to 8 seconds to find that, usually doesn't take the subconscious mind more than about 10 seconds to allow something to surface. You don't have to go searching for it. It can come up on its own. Once you have it, let's proceed. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. I release the anger and anxiety from that time of my life. Now take a nice deep breath in. Breathe in integrity. Breathe in confidence. Breathe in self-esteem. Exhale the anger. Breathe in centeredness. Breathe in awareness. Breathe in a knowingness of what you need to do, what needs to get done, and what is the priority. Let go of that anxiety. But think both anger and anxiety, because without them, you may just be someone who's a punching bag for somebody else. Or you may be someone who self-sabotages as soon as they want to finish a project, something happens, gets in the way, maybe you decide, this is not for me, I'm going to end now, and doesn't find any sense of completion. It doesn't really matter, but those emotions are always there to trigger you to say, okay, that was uncomfortable. What steps do I need to take in order to avoid this next time? Especially with what's going on right now in the workplace. Feeling a sense of, I need to protect myself from unwanted contagions that are in environments that I'm asked to return to. As well as, how do I prepare in case I must go in order for me to keep my position in that field of work. And then you can start writing down priorities, what you can do, what you can have ready, so that in what things you have to make conscious to others that are important to you, they must understand that you need in order to feel safe wherever you go. In terms of healthy and unhealthy anxiety, when we experience healthy anxiety, we can, for a moment, reflect on what we forgot, take care of, or prepare for. We can also, if we neglect these messages that anxiety brings, and we leave ourselves vulnerable to consequences that we may regret contributing toward by the lack of action. The more we ignore it, the stronger the waves will become, and the more challenging it'll become to confront as we progress in life. The more isolated and disassociated we are with the world. So we don't want anxiety to rob us of a life of adventure and fulfillment and accomplishment. We want it to provide us the energy to remind us that we're here to do something really important, to share our gifts, to be, to ever develop consciously. So as we finish off with our life, we know that moving on to the other realm, that we will be revered for the amount of effort it took to accomplish as much as we did, and knowing that the world was better off with us contributing than hiding in a cave somewhere. And that is a quote of mine: the only thing you can really learn how to control is yourself. You either perceive yourself as a victim of fate or a co-creator of your destiny. And victimization is an experience, but the experience isn't you. So understand that if we continue to allow ourselves to be victimized by others, we carry the energy that attracts the same circumstances. So by releasing the anger and releasing the anxiety, we are less prone to vibrating or attracting, being victim to people's unconscious thought programming, conditioning, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and possibly even physical abuse, because we're taking necessary actions to stay safe. So those are the two in terms of anger and anxiety. And we're returning to main here. And in terms of thought programs that can manifest from anxiety, I have a few that sometimes might come up in our minds, just like a flash of something. And one could be, in case you're not satisfied with the way the business has prepared for your return, your work is prepared for your return, thoughts that might go through your head saying business owners don't care about us, or the leaders of our country don't care about us because they're not taking the necessary protocols to ensure our safety. Another one is, if I don't go back, I could lose my position. Another, they will just replace me. Maybe statements that could be said on the other side. Stop being paranoid, or that you're being paranoid. There's two more. I am willing to sacrifice my safety for my immediate requirements, which, again, it can be perceived as reckless in the future. I am willing to be exposed to illness so my employer can save and profit further. So these are statements that people can be making. It could be feelings, but really that they're coming up and becoming thought forms. And we don't want these thought forms to persist for any longer than necessary. So here's a few things that we can collectively start gravitating towards as constructive phrases. I value my safety, will protect my rights to well-being, and will offer solutions that can help everyone feel safer. Another is, I will establish a routine that prepares me in preventing the potential risk of being infected by another. I will make my boundaries clear to all those who work near me and around me. I will voice my concerns to my employers and government as to standards that I need met to address my needs to safety and feeling of well-being in my work environment. If I feel safe where I am, I will contribute my skills, talents, and abilities in service to others. So those are some constructive programmings that we can use after we've addressed the release of anger and anxiety. We can start by saying this to ourselves so we can honor our needs first and foremost. And that concludes essentially all the content and healing involved in today's seminar, session, or event. And I invite you to ask any questions that you may have at this current time. If you have no further questions, thank you very much. And for those that may be watching this on YouTube, please comment below and I'll do my best to reply as quickly as I can. So emotion code is essentially an energy psychology technique. And what it does is, like emotional freedom technique, it engages the meridian system of the body. But with emotional freedom technique, you're asked to hit certain key meridian markers on the skin. And as you hit them, there is a trigger in the brain that acts as like a wake-up call saying, please take this instruction now. And people that have received this treatment have been able to mitigate their addictions or nullify them completely. They've been able to lose weight by reducing their cravings. And there's been other people that have been immensely benefited that have chronic pain. So whether they have fibromyalgia, other chronic pain symptoms, IBS, many others. There's a lot that stored emotional repressed energy can do to a biological environment. And Bruce Lipton is a stem cell researcher who's been in biology, medicine, the field of biology for 30 years, who has studied cell response to external stimulus such as toxins and other things. You probably may even seen studies where, or experiments where people were asked to talk poorly to a plant, the same type of plant, and talk beautifully to another plant, and notice that the leaves would droop more on the plant that was talked negative or poorly to, and the other leaves were uplifted and fortified from being given positive feedback from the external stimulus, which is human people. Then there's also how water behaves to verbal or energetic intention being cast. It becomes incoherent when there is a sense of hatred or disdain for its existence, and it becomes, it creates beautiful patterns when it is sung to or given great gratitude and love towards. So essentially, we have to be very conscious of the energy that we go through each day and learning more about the emotions, learning how to channel them. Some people are very receptive to emotions, and they need to know the difference between what is theirs and what is from another. And when we realize we've taken on some energy from somebody else, we do need to, no different than taking a shower every day or every other day, and that is to cleanse ourselves by intentionally requesting the release of the emotions that have been quite strong and saturated during that experience. So yeah, emotion code is, there's also body code, and body code is goes into many more imbalances, post-hypnotic suggestions, broadcast messages, emotional anchors, images that are imprinted in your psyche that have a strong emotional tone to them, according to people that were unhealthy in your life or weren't the right energy mixture for you. What else is there? There's so many imbalances, energy imbalances that are related. And in terms of post-hypnotic suggestions and broadcast messages, there are a ridiculous amount of thoughts that go through our head and things that they come up to the surface and then they disappear as quickly as they come. And what's important is to catch them and write them down and find out, no, this is not something that I want to keep hearing in my head, whether my mother said it to me, or my aunt, or my father, or my grandparents, or my culture says to me that tells me, that my perceived worth or value isn't what it should be, or that I'm this or I'm that. We have to, it's our choice to take responsibility for our self-confidence, our self-esteem, and our personal self-worth. And if we don't practice healthy anger and healthy amount of anxiety, we essentially allow others power over us and to drain us of our power. Thank you for everyone for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time.